Let's have a little chat about the weather, shall we? It's a good topic of conversation. You'll know that the weather is one of our favourite subjects, but it also affects how we feel. If you've got children, or you've taught children, or you've ever met a child, you will know that the weather affects how they are. Wild weather makes for wild children. The weather affects us, whether that's deep down in our bones as they ache when the storm is on its way, whether that's the dullness that we feel inside when it never seems to stop raining. Remember that a few weeks ago? It didn't stop raining. It rained so much it came through my wall, which has been fixed now, so don't worry. And we couldn't get anywhere because the roads were flooded. Seems like a lifetime away now, doesn't it? It's been really nice the past few days outside, and I wonder if that's helped our ability to deal with what we're facing at the moment. Storms come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes we know they're coming, sometimes we see the signs, sometimes they surprise us. What we know about storms is that they will always bring change. We look at the things in our garden and that are not tied down, and we wonder if they'll be there in the morning. We look at the trees outside and we look for falling branches so that we don't get hurt. We might park our car in a different place, close all the windows and find a blanket and a good film to help weather the storm. We might even find our own behaviour reflects the mood of the weather outside. This storm that we're living in at the moment, this coronavirus storm, while we saw it coming, I'm not sure we realised the majorly chaotic effect it would have on all of our lives. The landscape has changed over the last 2 weeks. For most of us, our lives look totally different, and we're facing decisions we've never had to face before. When the landscape is changed, our behaviour changes, our mindset changes. We've seen that in panic buying as an outlet of fear. We've seen that in our own lives as we've missed our families and those we love deeply, and we don't understand our reactions to that because we don't even see them very much anyway. We've seen that when we have those moments that switch between great sadness and confusion, deep peace, and a kind of out of body, is this actually only a dream kind of experience? We face ahead a massive time of change, a time that is uncertain and affects our very being. We worry for the safety of those around us. Many of us are exhausted. That is a natural reaction to trauma. Don't beat yourself up because you're exhausted. We grieve for what was and will never be again. And we try and begin to comprehend the risks and the massive decisions that our NHS and other key workers are making to ensure that as many people survive this as possible. In all this upheaval, we need to be gentle on ourselves. Self-care is so important in this time. We need to look out for one another, and we need to show love in new ways. And most of all, we need to turn to God, who promises to never leave us or forsake us. So the story we turn to today is one about a storm. It's a story where Jesus might surprise us with his behaviour, but a story that gives us a few things for reflection. As we read this story, we see something of who Jesus is and how we can depend on him to help us as we face the storm ahead. So I'm going to read from Luke chapter 8, verses 22 to 25. This is what it says. One day he got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, let us go across to the other side of the lake. So they put out, and while they were sailing, he fell asleep. A gale swept down on the lake, and the boat was filling with water, and they were in danger. They went to him and woke him up, shouting, Master, Master, we are perishing. And he woke up and rebuked the wind and the raging waves. They ceased, and there was calm. He said to them, where is your faith? They were afraid and amazed and said to one another, who then is this, that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him? The two key questions that are asked in this passage, one by Jesus and one by his disciples. The disciples find themselves in peril, actual peril. They fear for their lives. Their boat is filling up with water and they don't know what to do. They're swamped. They're overwhelmed by all that is happening and they panic big. We might know those feelings right now. And they say to Jesus, wake up because we're going to die. I've had a conversation with at least one person this last week that said they just want to go outside and shout. What is going on? Why doesn't this end? This storm, it's too much for us to face. And Jesus wakes up and he says, where is your faith? It's a really challenging question, isn't it? Surely because they woke Jesus up, their faith is in him. Well, not necessarily, because actually they don't ask Jesus to save them. They ask Jesus to panic with them. He's sleeping when they're panicking. Why isn't he panicking? We're going to drown, at least be awake for it. We don't act like that, do we? Well, yes, I think sometimes we do. Panic buying, looking for really odd cures for the virus on the internet and sharing it with others as the way forward, running around like headless chickens and not stopping to listen to advice. We can be a bit like the disciples on the boat. We ask Jesus for help, but do we listen to the words he says? Come to me, all you who have heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. My peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Cast your burdens onto Jesus because he cares for you. It's hard in the midst of events not under our control to trust in God. We feel like God has taken his eye off the ball, that he doesn't know what he's doing. But here Jesus urges the disciples not to panic, but to understand that God does care and knows what they're going through. Perhaps a better reaction to the storm would be for the disciples to wake up Jesus and say, help us. What can we do? God promises us the resources to journey through the raging waters. Stillness will come after the storm. When Jesus asks the question, where is your faith? He calls for a deeper, trusting faith, even when circumstances are beyond our control. In a boat full of former fishermen, surely one of them would have seen their way through the storm. They seem to have forgotten what they've learnt already and they panic. They forget to reach out to the resources they already have. They forget that they can trust in one another. We're going to drown is the wrong reaction. Jesus, help us is the right reaction. As we face what is ahead, so much of it is beyond our control. We don't know for sure what is going to happen next, whether the actions the government have taken are the right ones, whether it's going to affect us directly, whether those who live around us are making wise decisions, or even when we'll see our family again in person. But some things are within our control. We have God-given resources that we can use to ensure that we can face the storm ahead. When it's difficult to know what to do in this storm, we can first pray. We can pray for our families, pray for our government, pray for our NHS, pray for our church, pray for one another. It's a time for getting down on our knees and praying. And Jesus will help us to find the right way to pray and what to pray for. We've also been given different gifts where we can support one another. It might be that you're able to go out and are willing to shop for one another, and some of us have been doing that this week. It may be that you are really good on the phone and can talk to others. Phone one another up, support one another. Everybody wants to hear somebody else's voice. It may be that some of us discover a knack for homeschooling we never knew we had, and we can share that with one another. It may be that you have that thing that you've always meant to do but haven't got round to yet that will bless others. Use this time to do it now. It may be that we can learn a new skill that can be used to build up one another in the church. It may be you can learn that instrument that's just been sitting there, and we might gain musicians when all this is over. You might feel called to pray for your neighbours, and you might want to offer them prayer. You might want just to be a listening ear to those who stand 2 meters away. The possibilities are endless. Where is your faith? Where is your faithfulness? Remember that Romans 12 says our whole life is an act of worship. We live out the ways of Jesus now, and we can depend on him now. Divert your attention away from panic and fear by laying everything down before him and asking him how you can serve him and how he might help you do that today. As we face this storm, we need to be proactive in following the advice from the government and the NHS, but also proactive in choosing to try and embrace this new way of living in a different way to those around. Remember the upside down kingdom living that we've always talked about. It's for moments such as this, as well as when things feel a bit more normal. If you're called to rest right now, then do so. If you're called to serve, do it the best way you can. If you're called to learn new skills, then go for it. If you're called to care, then care. Jesus is here and he will help you. And stay safe. The second question in the passage is, who is this man that the winds and waves will obey him? Who is it that we can depend on and have faith in, knowing that whatever happens, there is better to come? It's Jesus. And until now, Jesus had simply been the disciples' leader and teacher, but here they discover more of who he is. They recognise that Jesus is more than just a good teacher, but actually has power over creation. The only one who does have power over creation is God. So that means Jesus must be God. It is here that the disciples realise that Jesus is God. It is a pivotal point on the disciples' journey. It's often in the storms that we see more of who God is, as we see and feel him work in our lives. As we face this storm, let us not forget to listen to God's voice, to see God at work, and to embrace what he is doing. It won't be easy to get through, but we will see God at work, and then in turn, that will help us to grow in faith. The disciples were following a leader that surprised them every day, and this story is a huge example of that. We should never assume that we know Jesus completely. There is always more to know. Make time to sit at his feet at this time and pray that we might begin to understand who this is we follow much more deeply and how he will help us through this storm. Let us expect to see God at work, and as we anticipate what he might do, it will help us to look beyond the fear and the anxiety which will inevitably stick around, and look ahead with hope as we begin to understand him better. I'm going to read a passage from Ephesians chapter 1, verse 15. Verse 15 to 23. I have heard of your faith in the Lord and your love towards all the saints, and for this reason I do not cease to give thanks for you as I remember you in my prayers. I pray that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give you a spirit of wisdom and revelation as you come to know him, so that with the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, what are the riches of his glorious inheritance among the saints, and what is the immeasurable greatness of his power for us who believe, according to the working of his great power. God put this power to work in Christ when he raised him from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly places, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion, and above every name that is named, not only in this age, but also in the age to come. And he has put all things under his feet, and has made him the head over all things for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills all in all. That's my prayer for you and for me, that as we face what is ahead, that we seek out God, that we begin to learn more of who Jesus is, and we begin to understand more of the hope that he gives to us and his mighty greatness. This storm is going to be difficult, beyond difficult, but it will pass. Everything will change, but our God is unchanging, and through this storm we will learn much more than we can ever imagine about what it means to trust in him and of his faithfulness to us. Amen.